You're listening to Biz-Souls, the business podcast with an edge, hosted by me, Rona Lewis, and Jeffrey Hansler. Tune in for perspectives and discoveries about the changing world of business. It's time to connect to the heart, soul, and humor of how business gets done.
All right, we are back for another exciting episode of Biz-Souls. You heard that right.
We get to the heart and soul of business and the people who make it happen. I'm Jeffrey Hansler.
I thought I was Jeffrey Hansler. Oh, wait. I'm Rona Lewis.
We're having an identity crisis today.
We are. I've always wanted to be, well, let's just say taller than I am. And I'm if I stand really high and have great hair, I'm 5'5". So, and you're 6'4". So there you go. Damn it. And that's okay because I will get over that because I'm resilient, and that is a subject that we're going to tackle today. Resiliency. Isn't that clever how I got into that?
It is.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. How high can you bounce, right?
It's how high can you bounce? Yeah, I can bounce pretty high.
And you've got a note down here that talks about resiliency as a superpower.
It is. Well, it's, we girls talk about that a lot, having superpowers and stuff. And I think resiliency is a superpower. We are so societally trained to be negative that to be resilient and make lemonade out of lemons is sometimes I think with everything that's going on is getting harder and harder.
Exactly. This used to be a white shirt, and I've turned it into lemonade.
That's
and
it. Oh,
yellow shirt. But okay.
It looks very good on you.
So look, we're going to talk about recognizing resiliency. Mm-hmm. We're going to talk about are you required to be obnoxious when you're resilient? We'll get to that subject in a little bit.
Yeah.
And then tips for improving resiliency, because we always want to leave you with tips and tools and things you can use to get better.
To think about.
Exactly.
Work on. All right. So how do you recognize resilience?
Well,
Jeffrey?
Let's start with the definition. We looked it up. Resilient people interpret their experience in a positive way in order to grow and thrive. They flip their experience to find good. So basically, they're just translating stuff.
Right. Yeah. And that's the power of positive thinking. People who are positive are resilient. They learn how to flip things. And there are some really famous people who have been able to bounce back from adversity. Think people like J.K. Rowling.
That's right. We love, and this gets back to our podcast last time, storytelling. Yeah. One of the classic stories by Joseph Campbell is The Hero's Journey. It has certain points to it. And she has a hero's
she does.
Story. Yeah, she got married. She had a kid. Her husband was abusive, so to speak, and negligent. Mm-hmm. And she ended up moving back to England. And
she was on government aid, and she was rejected like dozens of times before a small publishing house in London, Bloomsbury it's called, and they published it, and the rest is history.
Yes, Harry Potter.
I read all of those books when I was down at my brother Mark's house when my dad many years ago had heart surgery. So I read them all.
Excellent.
They were awesome.
Good. Well, and then there's Oprah Winfrey. She went through some trials.
She went through. She was raped and had a kid at 14 who unfortunately passed soon after she. I don't even know it was born. I don't know what the sex was. And then she bounced right back. She got a college scholarship and started on air locally. Went national and
beauty contest.
That's right, and then became one of the most influential and wealthiest people in the United States, if not the world, and has her own network, Oprah Winfrey Network.
Yeah, she's doing great. Yeah. She's doing absolutely. And then there's Ellen.
I love her. Yeah,
Ellen.
And she basically lost her career when she came out in the late 90s, and she's had tremendous success with her television show. I'm so sad that it's leaving because I really enjoyed it. And she had there's still some. We'll talk about some other issues with her in a minute.
We just saw the old Johnny Carson. I was looking at episodes of Johnny Carson, and she did her first monologue on Johnny Carson. she did not get invited to the couch.
Really?
She didn't go over. Yeah, the
didn't know
show.
that.
Yeah, I believe she, or maybe she did. They
I
just
thought she
cut it
was
that
like
way.
I don't know.
No, and her routine then was it was very different. It was new. It was a new approach, and I think the audience was a little confused. You could tell that there was a different vibe going on in that. So anyway, adversity and resilience kind of go hand in hand. And then of course there's Ed Catmull in Pixar. He was kind of he was fighting. He was creating resiliency in the company in an area he knew would be a problem, because every movie they had won an award and everybody was terrified and he was afraid fear was going to take over. So he was very proactive with making his entire company resilient. And then, he talks about Jobs there. And
Right. Well, Steve Jobs is a whole different animal. He never took a test, but they actually think, who is they anyway? They think he might have had Asperger's.
And possibly it could. I tell you, and again, that kind of brought up, do you have to be obnoxious to be resilient?
Yeah,
That's kind of what came to my mind.
We'll get to that in a second. And let's talk a little bit about the characteristics of resilient people.
Characteristics they apply to people that are resilient. You don't have to have all of these. These are some of the characteristics you might see in somebody.
True. Like acceptance of change. Not everybody does right away, and you have to be willing to go with the flow.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You need to be able to go. So change is a normal part of life, and again, we'll talk about that a little later. You've got to be emotionally aware and emotional self-regulation. And I know that one of the we'll talk about that later too. We're talking about a lot of stuff later, and then socially.
Right now we're just basically listing them, and then we'll do a deeper dive in a moment. But they have strong social connections, and that doesn't necessarily mean knowing a bucket of people. It's the people whose relationship you have. I'm not saying this in a correct sentence, but the relationships are strong. If you may have to have 3 friends, and they have your back for everything.
Yeah.
Is what I'm saying.
Yeah,
That's what I'm saying. What else?
Well, people have good problem solving skills. So and they see things, they see problems, and I think that goes together with not only they don't say, "Ooh, this is a problem," and panic. They go, "Ooh, this is a problem. I have good problem solving skills." So they have a positive self-image.
Yeah, and they're also able. It goes back to that acceptance of change. They can forgive and move on. They may not forget, but they can forgive.
Right.
And
that's a difficult one.
Because things change, people change, et cetera, et cetera.
So we were looking around for different stories, and it turns out there's been a lot of research on adults and resiliency, and then the next group is children and resiliency. So the middle group, high school, college, undergraduates, they didn't have a lot. So we did find this one study in China. It was a cross-cultural group of Chinese students and from like 3 or 4 different colleges in the area. And they found out that there were 3 qualities that defined resiliency. One, mood control. They could control their mood. So it's not that bad things didn't happen. It's how they reacted.
They got themselves out of that crankiness.
Yeah. Self-plasticity. So your ability to kind of remold yourself and reshape yourself and adjust to what's going on.
Right.
And then they defined it differently as coping flexibility. So that means that you don't just apply one coping skill. You are able to apply multiple coping skills, and because you may need more. It's kind of like, I guess, in a trauma unit, to use an analogy, a trauma unit where they have to give you multiple drugs to get you going or something.
Yeah, so. Sometimes you have to see what works. You may, one of your coping skills may be going for a walk, and you don't have time, or you want to meditate, and it's really noisy, so you have to try something else. Whatever your situation, that coping flexibility is being able to find something that works in that moment.
So maybe that ties into Nietzsche's, that which doesn't kill you makes you stronger, because it is through being in stressful situations or high anxiety situations and then being able to apply coping skills. And if you live through that one, you're able to take that knowledge, that learning knowledge, and use it for another situation.
Sure, and hopefully you will use that strength for good and not evil.
So then resiliency can be learned then.
Absolutely.
And one of the things we should do is probably, and we're not going to talk about children because this is more of a business. Children need to have experiences.
And there are
where
child
they can
labor
use-
laws that we can't get you work with it.
Well, there are yeah, exactly. Children
Sorry.
need situations where they have to build their own resiliency. So wait a second though, isn't that this is a whole nother subject. Should we be giving trophies to everyone then? That doesn't allow them to build their resiliency.
No,
So
I don't
we're
know.
crippling.
That's they do that
That's our that's the generation that we complained about though, where everybody got a trophy and we were like, hey, wait, what is this? Well, we don't want
No,
them to
that's
feel
like,
bad.
yes, every child is special. Yeah, every child is special in their own way, not in the same way. So your kid may do awesomely in a chess tournament and suck on the football field.
Yeah.
And that's, and just go where your talents lie and be, and that's where their resiliency comes in. The world is not perfect and we can't sugarcoat things,
Yeah, and I think, to a point about resiliency is the people that got stuck on that are like, no, you have to change. You don't. We're learning as a society as we're growing.
Yeah.
So this gets us kind of back to, do you have to be obnoxious
And
to
we
have
and we
resilient
clean
behavior?
that word up a lot to be in resilience mode because there are sometimes people who are resilient can be hard.
Difficult.
Yes.
Any other descriptive words that we came across? We had this listed in a different couple of things.
A-holes. We use the word a-holes.
Yeah, and probably a few other words along those lines too. And that's from our experiences.
Yeah,
with these people.
and I don't think you do have to be mean or nasty or any of those things to be resilient. I don't think you have to walk on other people to get what you want. And I'm not saying being a milquetoast or bending backwards. I certainly believe in standing up for what you believe in. But it's not necessary. I will never back away from a fight, but I will never start one. It's that sort of thing. And
That's a whole nother podcast. We'll talk about Rona's issues later.
yeah, I
on
have a
that
lot
one.
of them. We don't have that much time.
So the reason we got onto this subject or this portion of this subject is because of some of the names we mentioned. J.K. Rowling, she's getting some grief about some of her position, political position.
Right.
Ellen, a bunch of stories are coming about Ellen being extraordinarily abusive and difficult
and difficult to work with, right?
Same thing with Oprah. That people say that she just
She built her studios, her old studios in Chicago. And if I'm wrong about this, please, someone let me know. And I've heard this from more than one person that she set it up so it's like a casino where they can
pump
be there.
oxygen in.
Yeah, you can be there 24 hours a day. There's no clocks. I don't think it's that bad. But and they had food and games and things like that. So people would work longer and never go home, that sort of thing, which can be a good thing and can be a bad thing,
Yeah, well, maybe that's just her approach to helping people be
Could
more
be.
resilient.
Could be.
So who knows?
And I'm just saying what I heard, and that's so I would love to hear the facts. If someone knows, please let us know.
So let's talk about some qualities of what makes resiliency. So we've talked about mental flexibility, your ability to look at things differently, see things, and your ability to change things. And
Yeah, I mean, resilient people need to change the way they think, because otherwise, nothing. If there's rigid thinkers, they won't listen to anybody else. They wallow in self-pity. They have really low emotional intelligence. They don't look inward at all.
Well, I was part of the sales team for Southern California rep firm selling Apple computers when they started off. And
Yeah.
I remember the stories that came up that jobs when we went to Xerox Park and saw the GUI language, graphic user interface language, he immediately adopted it and saw that as the future. So in that case, he was very flexible. On the other hand, he was very stuck on certain ideas and the way things had to be done, and he was emotionally abusive to people inside.
Yeah.
Because his inability to see things through their eyes.
Right. And to add to that, I always think it's great. People, resilient people, people with mental flexibility, tend to have targets, goals. They know what they want to do. They don't necessarily know how they're going to do it. And stubborn people won't look. They go with blinders on. No man is an island. We all have our wheelhouse, our bailiwick, whatever. And you have to be open to having other experts help you get to that goal, and that's that mental flexibility to know what you're good at and what you're not, and when to give up that control.
Yeah, and it's difficult. So that's where somebody has to decide out their mental flexibility, what helps and what doesn't do it. I know when I get tenacious about writing something or completing something, I don't want to be interrupted by anybody. And so that focus, so I am kind of intolerant at that point. So, can I apologize about it afterwards? If I was short with somebody because I was working or focused on something, I don't know if that's part of the resiliency. I do know that the more emotional you are and more affected by other people, the more you care about other people, it's harder to be resilient on something because you see the pain. It's like a soldier, a general, I suppose, sending his troops in and they're just getting wiped out.
Yeah.
At a certain point, when you call retreat and back off, and when do you promote them to go on? And we've got stories and stories. So I think as human beings, we don't really understand totally what resiliency is,
right,
and how somebody can be one way and another the other way.
Yeah. And there's something called a locus of control, and it's a foundational belief about how one controls their own destiny. And this is a concept that was developed in the 50s by a psychologist by the name of Julian Rotter. And it's a personality characteristic, and it refers to how much individuals believe that they can control. Sorry, my mic is not up high enough. How they can control the events that affect them, and individuals who have a strong internal locus of control believe they are the masters of their own destiny. It's like they don't just go by things of chance and are all loosey-goosey. They are just, rigid in that.
What happens when it gets nutso, like with, Hitler was, he believed that he should be running the world.
That's right.
That's absolutely, and look at all the damage that he did by that. And also look at, he got elected, he took an entire country, he was able to focus and how do you become Chancellor of Germany? That's amazing. He was a nutcase.
He was. Well, we've had a few nutcases in our own politics, and it's about, not saying when or where, and I'm not getting into that. You are allowed to believe what you believe. My point is that it's, sometimes people who have a huge locus of control can be very compelling because they believe in themselves to a point of insanity. That's where narcissism comes in.
Right. So it's kind of a balance between. So you should believe in your ability to affect the world, not believe you should
confidence.
Control the world.
Yeah, right.
Okay, you should own stuff and own your own beliefs, and you should own your belief that you can achieve something without blaming others.
Yeah. And not be a victim.
Yeah, and not be a victim. Be a survivor. Focus on the positive with your own life.
Yeah.
So that optimism is good.
Well, and that's optimism and hope and positive thinking. They are actually predictors of resilience and, things like self-worth and confidence. We all have our ups and downs. I pretty much like who I am. If you haven't noticed, I'm like my own best audience. And there are times that I go through a lack of confidence. We all have ebbs and flows. And overall, it's your ability to see things in a positive light.
Yeah. So, Rona, how about the people that are like, oh, it's a great, wonderful, today's the best day of my life. I mean, just stick a finger down my throat.
Yeah, that is actually, that's a thing. That's called toxic positivity. The people that espouse, you should always feel good and the world is rainbows and butterflies and, balloons and everyone is wonderful. No. That when people are too positive, they're usually hiding something. They're not grounded in reality. You have to be able to feel your feelings and deal with realistic events. There are terrible things happening in the world, and there are always lessons to be learned. And you can feel terrible. You can, what can I do for this? How can I help? Even that feeling of needing to be helpful is a positive feeling,
So basically, I think we've kind of touched on it. I think fear is the element, the emotion that gets in the way of things. So if you're fearful, then you start putting up barriers. You stop listening to people. If you're fearful, you put on this toxic positivity and optimism. So fear is an indicator that you're heading down the wrong path of resiliency.
Yeah, and the path of resiliency. Let's just take it to the next level. And I just want to.
I'm sorry, I left my vocabulary hard drive.
We were just, stop to think about. You were talking about how did Hitler get in power? He fed fear to the masses, and he was so positive. Was it P.T. Barnum said there's a sucker born every minute. If you say something with enough conviction, people are going to believe you. If you believe in your own fallacy, other people will too. All
right. That's great. So how do we, what are our tips for improving
My favorite one is to be like Cher in Moonstruck and just bitch slap someone and say, snap out of it. Great. That's my story.
Great.
Just get over yourself.
God, she did a great scene. I think you had it.
It's the hair. Yeah. Yeah. Or I could do it. Yo, snap out of it. You got to do like a more New York accent. So.
Yeah, she was very.
She was awesome.
Yeah, what was that? Moonstruck. Okay,
that was a lot of years ago.
Yeah. So look, and we know the basics. We know Vince Lombardi, old coach for Green Bay Packers. For those of you who don't know him, very successful. He said, "Look, fatigue doth make cowards of us all." He was a big proponent in being in shape. Mm-hmm. And so, along with that, eating healthy, exercise, sleep, staying connected to people, meditate, ask for help, educate yourself on what's going on, be aware of yourself, and get outside.
Yeah, this is all pretty. Oh, really? Thank you, Captain Obvious. It's basically living a balanced life. I always say I don't believe in a work-life balance because work is part of life. It's all about life balance. Work, home, relaxation, self-care is key to resilience. It's that body, mind, spirit connection, yada, 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 however you want to say it. I yadded you. I yadded this. And it deserved it because bottom line is it's all about balance and self-care.
And so would you describe, Rona, resiliency as a destination or a journey?
Well, Jeffrey, I would describe it as a journey. It's because it's constant. You have to work on your coping skills and your resiliency.
Yeah, and that comes with time, and you've got to have setbacks to be able to work on your coping skills.
Right.
And so we broke our tips into 3 categories here. Building resiliency, that's the first category. Mm-hmm. So things to build your resiliency. Take action on things you can control. We talked about that.
Right.
What's one thing you might do to take control?
Get rid of people who don't make sense anymore, if they're toxic people, if you're in any kind of a relationship, and I don't care if you're related or not, if that person gives you more agita than happiness, bye-bye.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm on your good friend list, though.
Yes, you are.
Okay,
yes,
that's
you are.
great,
You
great,
are.
great.
Because I would tell you.
Oh, yeah.
In front of everyone, I would tell you. This has been fun, but gotta go.
Second thing, change your relationship about failure. Start rewriting how you look at it. It's an opportunity. It's a chance to learn. It's a path to success. All those things.
Right. And then know your limits, like we were talking before about that locus of control. You have to know what you're good at, what you're not, and know when to pass it on and share the experience with someone who could make it, who could help you move forward. You want to maximize your positive experiences versus being frustrated.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, second category, maintain resilience in times of crisis.
You mean like now? We have a few crises.
You mean now
going
on our podcast?
Yes, right now, right this second, I'm going through a crisis.
No.
But with the pandemic, with us being so polarized in politics, with Ukraine, we don't know if it's going to be World War III or not. And whether stories are true or not, they go into our psyche. So we get, that fear comes in. So we have to really translate the situation into
a learning situation.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
that makes sense. I'd also say reflect on your own path.
Yeah. Self-reflection.
So understand how you got there. Think of the good things. Write a good story. Make yourself the hero of your own story.
Your own hero's journey, right?
Like Walter Mitty, he just made himself a hero of it. Yeah,
Danny Kaye, one of my favorites. I love Danny Kaye. Okay, I digress. And then, with that self-reflection, some of the questions you can ask yourself.
Yeah, when you're faced with a problem.
Yeah.
So what can I learn from this?
Right. And how can I best move through this and find the greatest good for all involved. One of the things that I do, because I am not a minutia person, as Jeffrey well knows, when we do business, I'm a concept person. So what's the big picture? What are we looking to do?
As opposed to the story that she's just lazy, doesn't want to get into details and leaves all the work for me.
And I have no problem with that whatsoever, because I have the personality of the two of us. So he's riding on my coattails.
That's right.
I keep telling him this, and hopefully he'll believe it one of these days.
Yeah, her mail stack is 3 times larger than my mail stack. And they're all compliments, whereas mine, wow.
You're not giving Rona enough credit. That's what people say to you.
Right, exactly.
Okay, so what else?
What skills do I have that are going to get? So remind yourself, I have the skills for this. And these are the skills I'm going to use. And then also, again, back to the learning. Finish it off with the learning experience. What could I do differently next time so this wouldn't happen?
Yeah, and actually, Jeffrey and I do this a lot. Actually, after every podcast, what could we do differently? Rona, you could do more work. You could do. I'm kidding. He doesn't do that. Well, sometimes you do.
So our last section is, look, you learn this stuff through repetition. So what are some repetition practice patterns?
Repetition practice patterns.
Like journaling. Journaling is a great way. Just write down your stories, capture them. Or you could do meditation or prayer.
I actually, I meditate and journal almost every day. I give 15 minutes to each one so that I can control, I just kind of set my my day and write down things that are bothering me. And fun fact, you can journal at night before bed. Studies have shown that if you do that, if something's bothering you, you actually write it down, you take it from your brain to the to paper. It takes it out of your head, and people sleep better. And people are more resilient when they get more sleep because they're not as cranky. Just a fun fact.
Yeah. Well, and, journaling doesn't have to be a verbal thing. My mom during photo albums. She loved looking at the photo albums she'd been putting together for years and years. And she would tell the positive stories and the positive events in life and all the things that we did. She was very proud of what she and my father had done in raising the family. And she was very, very happy. And she was great on that.
That's great.
And, seeing yourself as a hero. So on a regular basis, what are the things you do to help people out?
Yeah.
And
pat yourself on the back.
Yeah, and what you can do from your lessons to share with others, which ties into the last one, which is?
Give yourself a purpose.
Yeah, give yourself a bigger purpose. I mean, make it not about the moment. Make it about a bigger purpose. Elon Musk's bigger purpose is, giving the world, human race, options of living on other planets. He wants to be the person that marks that.
Right.
What are they going to write about him in the history books? He had Bitcoin. I don't know what they're going to write. So Rona, any final thoughts, especially about giving yourself a purpose and as a positive purpose for a bigger picture thing?
Well, I'm all about purposeful play. That's it. It's huge. I'm an expert in that. And when you play, when you're playing games, activities, fun things, and that's I use that. There's a method to the madness. It keeps you present. It improves your resiliency from learning failures. Learning through failure and adversity. That's what improv is. I use a lot of improv when I go into to give programs, and it features failure. That's where the gold is, and you move through it and realize that failure is actually really fun, because it's like, oh, I made a mistake and that was really fun, and now I learned from it. And how can I move forward? It's easier to learn when you go with purposeful play without the dire consequences.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense.
And how about you?
I want to focus on the manager and leadership situation in business, and be very specific. And the first thing is empathy. Empathy first. People, because of the pandemic, they've got fears, their isolation, they feel all kinds of things. Now more than ever, empathy needs to be part of the business environment.
Agreed.
And when I grew up, it wasn't that way. Second thing is pay attention when your colleagues are talking about a story or something fearful. They're trying to tell you they need to talk about it. So listen to them if they're talking about it. Make the time. Part of your effectiveness as a manager or a leader is making the time so you can engage with your people and listen to them and support them. And then finally, our role as managers and leaders is to make people feel safe. So create a safe environment. And you do that by creating routines and normalcy at work. So when something traumatic happens at work or in the environment or goes on, you want to listen to them. You want to give them time to do it. You also want to back that with structure and security of doing the routine things and getting on with things.
Right. When people, we talk about psychological safety all the time, and when people feel safe, it's easier for them to work on their resilience because they're willing to mess up and try new things, et cetera, et cetera. So that's really important in the business world.
Yeah.
All right.
So we are wishing all of you resiliency in every day and in the future. And when you have days when you're less than resilient, those are days you get to learn and try new coping skills.
Right. Just think about making lemonade out of lemons or orangeade or whatever fruit you happen to enjoy, because that's there is a positive to virtually everything.
Yeah, couldn't have said it better. I'm just don't have anything funny to say about lemons and lemonade. I thought I could come up with something. I haven't got it. So I'm Jeffrey Hansler.
And I'm Rona Lewis.
Thanks for spending time with us today. We'll catch you in our next episode of Biz-Souls.
We'll see you later.
You've been listening to the Biz-Souls podcast with your hosts Rona Lewis and Jeffrey Hansler. Did you have fun? Subscribe, rate, and leave a review. It's very much appreciated. Talk to you next week.